How does a man survive 2 years in prison for something he never did, and walk out with his name cleared in public? Why did I refuse to see my own son every single month, even when he begged? And how did the day of my release become the day they lost everything they took from me? The answer starts on a Thursday evening in March, in my kitchen where I was heating leftover chicken. I'd been running my small construction business for 15 years. Decent work, honest money, nothing flashy, but enough to own my house outright and sleep well at night. The doorbell rang at 7:30. I wasn't expecting anyone. My son Lucas had his own life now, his own apartment across town with his wife Mara. We talked maybe once a month. Saw each other on holidays. Normal. I opened the door. Lucas stood there with Mara beside him. Her face was blotchy. Her eyes were red and swollen. His jaw was clenched tight. They walked past me into my house without waiting. "Dad, we need to talk," Lucas said. I followed them into the kitchen. "What's going on?" Mara sat down at my table. She folded her hands in front of her, fingers laced together, knuckles white. "I lost the baby." The words hit me like a hammer. "Oh, God. Mara, I'm so sorry. When did this happen?" 3 days ago, Lucas said. He was standing, hands shoved deep in his pockets. "Why didn't you call me? I would have come to the hospital." "We needed time to process what happened," Mara said softly. She was staring at the table, not at me. I pulled out a chair and sat down. "Is there anything I can do now? Anything you need?" Lucas turned to face me. His eyes were hard, cold. "We need you to tell us why you did it." I blinked. "Did what?" "You know exactly what you did," Mara whispered. My hands went still on the table. "I honestly have no idea what you're talking about." 2 weeks ago, Lucas said. His voice was getting louder. "You came to our apartment. You started yelling at Mara about money. You got right in her face. You grabbed her arm. You pushed her." I stared at him. "Lucas, I haven't been to your apartment in 3 months." "Stop lying," Mara's voice cracked. "You grabbed my arm so hard it left bruises. You shoved me backward and I hit the door frame. I started bleeding that night. The doctor said the trauma caused the miscarriage. I felt like the floor had disappeared. That never happened. I swear to you, that never happened." Lucas took a step toward me. His face was red now, his hands balled into fists. "You're going to deny it? You're going to pretend you didn't hurt her?" "I'm not pretending anything." I kept my voice calm. "I was working that entire week. I can show you my schedule. I have clients who can confirm where I was. I was never at your apartment." "Then how did I get these?" Mara pulled out her phone and turned it toward me. On the screen were photographs of bruises, dark purple marks on a pale arm, more bruising on a lower back. I looked at the pictures. "I don't know how you got those bruises, but I didn't give them to you." "This is unbelievable," Lucas said. He was pacing now. "Mom warned me about you. She said you had a temper. I never believed her until now." "My ex-wife?" "Of course. We'd divorced 15 years ago. She'd tried to poison Lucas against me back then, too." "Lucas, listen to me." I stood up slowly, hands out. "I understand you're upset, but I didn't do this. I would never hurt Mara. I would never hurt anyone." "Save it for the police," Lucas said. My stomach dropped. "The police?" "We're filing a report tonight," Mara said, crying again. "I can't let you get away with this. You took my baby from me." "I didn't touch you." My voice was still calm, but I could feel the panic. "Please think about this. Why would I hurt you?" "Because you're angry we're starting a family," Lucas said. "Because you think we can't afford it. Because you're controlling and intimidating." Every word was wrong, but I could see it in their eyes. They believed it. They'd already decided. "If you're going to the police, then go," I said quietly. "Because I have nothing to hide. I didn't do what you're accusing me of, and the truth will prove that." They left without another word. Mara first, Lucas last, pausing at the door to give me one final look. I saw hatred there, pure hatred, from my own son. I stood in my kitchen for a long time. The chicken was cold, I couldn't eat. My mind was racing, trying to understand what had just happened. They'd rehearsed it. That's what kept coming back to me. The way Mara had folded her hands just so. The way Lucas had used specific phrases, repeated them. Got in her face. He'd said it twice, word for word. It felt choreographed. I sat down at my computer and started making a list. Every job I'd worked in the past month, every client, every receipt, every witness who could confirm where I'd been and when. I was methodical, organized. If they were going to the police, I needed to be ready with facts. 3 hours later, there was a knock at my door. 2 police officers stood on my porch. They were young, professional, polite. They asked if I would come to the station to answer some questions. I said yes. I grabbed my jacket. I followed them to their car. The interview room was exactly like you see on television. Gray walls, a metal table bolted to the floor, 2 chairs, a camera in the corner with a red light glowing. A detective named Ortiz sat across from me. "Mr. Hale, do you know why you're here?" "My son and his wife came to my house tonight. They accused me of assaulting Mara 2 weeks ago. They said it caused her to have a miscarriage." "Did you assault Mara Hale?" "No." Where were you on March 8th between noon and 6 p.m.? I pulled out my phone, showed her my calendar. "I was working on a kitchen remodel in Westfield. The homeowner's name is Janet Price. I was at her house from 8 in the morning until 6:30 that evening." Ortiz made notes. "Mara Hale has medical records documenting a miscarriage. She has photographs showing bruising consistent with physical assault." "I'm not saying she doesn't have bruises. I'm saying I didn't give them to her." The attending physician noted that the trauma was consistent with the timeline Mara described. "Then the physician is wrong about the cause, or Mara is lying about when she got hurt, or both." Ortiz leaned back. She studied me for a long moment. "Mr. Hale, your son is very upset. He believes you caused his wife to lose their child." "I understand he's upset, but being upset doesn't change the facts. I wasn't there. I didn't touch her, and I can prove it." "How?" I told her about Janet Price, about the security cameras she had installed, about the receipts from the hardware store where I'd bought supplies that morning, about the timestamp on my credit card transactions. Ortiz wrote it all down. "We'll investigate. Don't leave town." I drove home at midnight. My hands were steady on the wheel. I went inside, sat at my kitchen table, and added everything I'd told the detective to my list. Then I waited. The charges came 4 days later: assault causing bodily harm. The prosecutor's office called it aggravated because of the miscarriage. My bail was set at $50,000. I posted it using my house as collateral. I hired a lawyer named Victor Nolan. He was 60 years old, gray-haired, and didn't waste words. He sat in my living room and read through the police report without expression. "They have medical records," he said. "They have photographs. They have a witness statement from your son." "I wasn't there." "Can you prove it?" I handed him my list. "I was working on a kitchen remodel in Westfield that day. The homeowner's name is Janet Price. I was there from 8 in the morning until 6 at night. I have her phone number. I have receipts for materials I bought that morning." Victor made notes. "We'll need her testimony." "She'll give it." "What about motive? Why would they accuse you?" "Lucas has been asking me for money for the past year. I've said no. His credit is bad. Maybe he's angry about that." Victor closed his folder. "We'll build the case. Stay calm. Don't contact them. Don't post on social media." The trial was scheduled for November, 6 months away. I kept working. I showed up to job sites. People in town started looking at me differently. Word spreads fast in small places. Some clients canceled contracts. Some didn't return calls. I didn't defend myself publicly. I just worked and waited. By July, I was down to half the work I'd had before. The contractors I'd worked with for years suddenly had other people they preferred. No one wanted to be associated with a man accused of hurting a pregnant woman. Victor was thorough. He contacted Janet Price multiple times, walked through her security footage frame by frame, had it analyzed by a digital forensics expert. "This footage is ironclad," Victor told me in August. "The timestamps are verified. There's no question you were in Westfield that day." Will the jury believe it? They should, but juries are unpredictable, especially in cases involving lost pregnancies. Emotion can override evidence. The trial date loomed. I couldn't sleep most nights. I'd lie in bed running through scenarios. What if the jury didn't believe me? The courtroom was cold, wood-paneled walls. The judge was a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes. Lucas sat in the front row with Mara. She wore a gray dress. He wore a dark suit. They didn't look at me. Victor presented my alibi. Janet Price testified that I'd been at her house all day. The security camera footage was played for the jury. Clear video of my truck in her driveway from 7:45 in the morning until 6:30 at night. The prosecutor argued that the footage could have been edited, that I could have left during lunch, that Janet Price might be lying to protect me, Mara testified. She described how I'd shown up unannounced, how I'd yelled about their spending, how I'd grabbed her arm and shoved her. "He squeezed so hard," she said, her voice breaking. "I could feel his fingers digging into my skin. Then he pushed me. I tried to catch myself, but my back hit the door frame." "What happened next?" the prosecutor asked. "I started bleeding that night. By the next morning, it was worse. Lucas took me to the hospital. They did an ultrasound. She paused, tears streaming. There was no heartbeat. Several jurors wiped their eyes. Lucas testified. He described finding the bruises. He described Mara telling him what happened. He described his shock, his anger. I wanted to confront him immediately, Lucas said. But Mara was scared. She thought he might come back. So we waited, and then we lost the baby. His voice cracked. The jury watched with sympathetic eyes. Victor cross-examined both of them. He showed Mara the security footage. Time-stamped, crystal clear, my truck never leaving except for lunch. Miss Hale, this footage shows Mr. Hale was in Westfield all day. How do you explain that? I don't know, she said quietly. Maybe the footage is wrong. The footage is time-stamped and verified by a forensic analyst. It's not wrong. Then maybe I got the day wrong. You testified very specifically that this happened on March 8th. I thought it was March 8th. But you're not sure anymore? I'm sure he hurt me. I'm sure about that. Victor pressed harder with receipts, timestamps, witness testimony. Mara's story showed cracks, small contradictions, but she held on to the core. I'd hurt her, the medical examiner testified. Dr. Raymond Foster. He confirmed she'd lost the pregnancy. He confirmed bruising. But when Victor asked if he could definitively say the bruising caused the miscarriage, he hesitated. Miscarriages are complicated. They can be caused by many factors. Trauma is one possibility. But so are chromosomal abnormalities, hormonal imbalances, infections, and spontaneous causes. Can you say with medical certainty that the bruising caused Ms. Hale's miscarriage? No. I can say the timing is consistent, but correlation isn't causation. So it's possible the miscarriage occurred for completely natural reasons? Yes, that's possible. Victor called Janet Price. She was credible, honest. She testified that I'd been at her house all day. Did Mr. Hale leave at any point other than his lunch break? No, his truck was in my driveway all day. I would have noticed if he'd left. The prosecutor cross-examined her. You're a client, someone who's paying him money, someone who might have a reason to protect him. Janet's eyes went cold. Young man, I'm 72 years old. I taught high school English for 40 years. I don't lie for anybody. Mr. Hale was at my house all day on March 8th. That's the truth. The jury liked her. Victor called the hardware store clerk, the forensic analyst who verified the security footage, the sandwich shop owner. Every piece fit together, a complete picture of a man who'd been nowhere near the scene. The prosecutor argued that all of it could be fabricated, but he couldn't prove any of it. He had theories. I had evidence. The jury deliberated for 2 days. When they came back, the forewoman stood. She was a middle-aged black woman with kind eyes. She looked at me once before reading the verdict. On the charge of assault causing bodily harm, we find the defendant guilty. The room spun. I heard Victor swear. I heard Mara sob with relief. I heard Lucas whisper, "Thank God." But I didn't hear anything else. I just sat there, staring straight ahead, trying to understand how 12 people could look at that evidence and still get it wrong. Judge Powell set sentencing for 2 weeks later. Victor filed an immediate notice of appeal. This is wrong. The evidence was overwhelming. The jury got it wrong. Appeals take years, I said quietly. I know, but we'll win eventually. Sentencing day arrived on a cold morning in late November. Judge Powell reviewed the case file, reviewed the jury's verdict. Mr. Hale, the jury has found you guilty of a serious crime. The loss of a child, regardless of the circumstances, is a tragedy. This court takes such matters very seriously. She paused. You are sentenced to 2 years in state prison. You will be eligible for parole after 18 months. 2 years. Lucas cried when she said it. Mara held him close. They looked like people who'd finally gotten justice. I sat perfectly still. The bailiffs took me into custody immediately. Handcuffs, cold metal against my wrists, processing in a holding area. Victor came to see me before I left. We sat across from each other with a glass partition between us. I picked up the phone. He picked up his. I'm filing the appeal this week. I'm going to fight this, Ethan. I'm going to get you out. Take your time, I said. He looked confused. What? Just take your time. Build it right. You want to stay in prison? I want the appeal to be perfect. I want every piece of evidence documented. I want everything so airtight that when it comes time, there's no question. That could take months, maybe longer. Then it takes longer. I could see he didn't understand, but he would eventually. The prison was 3 hours north, medium security. The transport van left at dawn. I was handcuffed to a bar along the wall with 3 other men. Nobody spoke during the drive. The landscape changed from city to farmland to nothing. We arrived mid-morning, high fences topped with razor wire, guard towers, concrete buildings painted institutional beige, everything designed to strip away anything that might make you feel human. The intake process was mechanical. They took my clothes, my watch, my wallet, everything that made me Ethan Hale. They gave me a uniform, orange pants, orange shirt. They took my photograph, fingerprinted me. I became inmate 47832. My cellmate was a man named Raymond, late 40s, thin, quiet. He was serving 4 years for wire fraud. He read paperback westerns and didn't ask questions. I didn't offer answers. The first week was about learning the routine. Wake up at 6, breakfast at 6:30, count at 7, work detail at 8, lunch at noon, dinner at 5:30, lights out at 10. The same thing every single day. I kept to myself, didn't join groups, didn't start conversations. I went to my assigned work detail in the kitchen, washed dishes, did what I was told, stayed quiet. On the 8th day, a guard handed me a form. Visitor request, Lucas Hale. I read it twice. My son wanted to see me, wanted to sit across from me in the visitation room and what? Apologize? Gloat? I checked the box marked declined and handed it back. The guard raised an eyebrow. You sure? Most guys in here would do anything for a visit from family. I'm sure. Raymond noticed that evening. Family? My son. You don't want to see him? No. Most people in here, family's all they got. Most people in here didn't have their family put them here. Raymond was quiet. Then he nodded slowly. Okay, I get it. I stared at the ceiling. I thought about Lucas being turned away at the desk, about having to explain to Mara why his father wouldn't see him. Good. The second request came exactly 1 month later. Lucas Hale. I declined again. This time the guard was different. An older man named Torres. Your son came a long way to see you? I know. He seemed pretty upset when they told him you declined. I'm sure he was. The third request came right on schedule. Month 3. Lucas again. This time Mara was also requesting to visit. Both of them. I declined both. Raymond finally asked about it directly. We were in the common area during free time. He was reading another Louis L'Amour novel. I was reading a book on contract law. Your family keeps trying to see you. I know. You keep turning them down. Yes. That's unusual. Most guys in here, their family stops coming after a few months, but yours keeps showing up. He closed his book and looked at me. So why don't you want to see them? I met his eyes. Because they're the reason I'm here. Understanding dawned. They testified against you? They accused me. They lied. They convinced a jury to ignore evidence. They put me here. And now they want to visit you? Every month like clockwork. Raymond whistled softly. That's ruthless. Yes. What are they trying to do? Probably want to see me broken, want me to apologize. Either way, they're not getting what they want. So you're punishing them. No, I'm protecting myself. Every time they come here, they're expecting something, a reaction, emotion, words they can twist. As long as I refuse, they get nothing. They have to sit with what they did. That uncertainty is worse than anything I could say. Raymond smiled. You're smarter than you look. Thanks. How long are you going to keep refusing? As long as they keep asking. The fourth request came, declined, the fifth declined, the sixth declined. Word started spreading through C Block. The guy who wouldn't see his family. Some inmates thought I was crazy, some thought I was smart. I didn't care what they thought. The guards noticed too. They'd make comments. Your son's persistent. They really want to see you. I never responded beyond declining the visit. By the 6th month, Warden Brooks called me to her office. She was in her mid-50s, gray hair pulled back tight, face like carved stone. Sit down, Mr. Hale. I sat. She had a file open. My file. You've been here 6 months. Your conduct has been exemplary. No violations. You follow the rules. You keep to yourself. Thank you, ma'am. But there's something unusual. Your son has requested to visit you 6 times. You've declined every single one. Your daughter-in-law requested twice. Also declined. That's not normal. It's not against the rules, is it? No. Inmates have the right to refuse visitors, but most men would welcome family contact. I appreciate the concern, ma'am. I'm not concerned. I'm curious. Why won't you see them? Personal reasons. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. She studied me. I've been doing this job for 20 years. I've seen thousands of inmates. Some are guilty and know it. Some are guilty and deny it. And some, she paused, some are innocent. I didn't respond. Your case file is interesting. The evidence against you was testimonial, but you had a strong alibi. Multiple witnesses, video footage, yet the jury still convicted. They did. And now your family wants to see you, but you refuse. Every single time. Why? I looked at her directly. Because they're the ones who put me here, ma'am. My son accused me of something I didn't do. He convinced his wife to lie. He convinced a jury to ignore evidence. And now he wants to come here and what? Apologize? Make himself feel better? He gets nothing from me. Warden Brooks was quiet. Then she said, "You're playing a long game, aren't you?" "I'm not playing anything, ma'am. I'm just refusing to participate in their narrative." "What narrative?" "The one where I'm the bad guy, where I'm supposed to feel guilty, where I'm supposed to beg for forgiveness for something I didn't do. As long as I refuse to see them, I control that narrative, not them." She nodded slowly. "You're an interesting man, Mr. Hale." "I'm just a man who knows what he didn't do." She closed my file. "Keep up the good behavior, and for what it's worth, I hope you're right about your innocence." I left her office and went back to my cell. Raymond was reading another Western. "What did the warden want?" "To understand why I won't see my family." "What did you tell her?" "The truth." "Which is?" "That I'm not going to give them what they want." Raymond smiled. "You know, when you first got here, I thought you were just another guy who got caught. But you're different." "How so?" "You're patient. Most guys in here, they're reactive, emotional. They make decisions based on feeling, but you're thinking 5 steps ahead." "I've had a lot of time to think." "What are you going to do when you get out?" "Prove I was right. And then?" "Watch them lose everything." He whistled. "Ruthless. No, just fair." The prison library became my refuge. It was small, but surprisingly well stocked. Law books, case studies, reference materials. The librarian was an older woman named Mrs. Pacheco. She'd worked at the prison for 20 years and had a soft spot for inmates who actually read. I went there every afternoon during free time. I read everything I could find on wrongful convictions. I studied cases where false accusations had been overturned. I learned about the appeals process, about expert testimony, about forensic evidence, about how lies collapse under scrutiny over time. One book in particular caught my attention. Anatomy of a False Accusation by a forensic psychologist. It outlined patterns, how accusers built credibility through emotion, how they used sympathetic circumstances to deflect scrutiny, how they relied on the assumption that no one would lie about something so serious. But people did lie, all the time, especially when money was involved. That thought stuck with me. Money. Lucas had been asking me for money for over a year before the accusation. $5,000 here, $10,000 there, always with a good reason. Car repairs, medical bills, credit card debt. I'd said no every time, told him he needed to learn to manage his finances, to live within his means. Had that made him angry enough to do this? It seemed extreme, but then again, I'd underestimated him before. I started writing letters to Victor, carefully worded, never emotional, just questions and observations. Has anyone checked the property records for my house? Has anyone looked into Lucas's financial situation since my incarceration? Has anyone verified that all my assets remain secure? Victor's responses came slowly. Brief, professional, but I could read between the lines. I'll look into it. 3 weeks later, another letter arrived. I've checked the property records. There's been some activity. I'm investigating further. That was all it said, but it was enough. I wrote back immediately. What kind of activity? His response took longer this time. 2 weeks of waiting. When the letter finally came, I read it 5 times before fully processing what it said. Your house was placed in a trust 2 months after your sentencing, and Lucas Hale is listed as the trustee. The paperwork claims you authorized this transfer. Did you? I sat on my bunk and stared at those words. My house, the house I'd owned for 20 years, the house I'd bought after my divorce, the house where I'd raised Lucas, the house I'd used as collateral for bail, transferred into a trust. With Lucas as the trustee, I hadn't authorized anything. Raymond noticed my expression. Bad news? Clarifying news. What does that mean? It means I was right about why I'm here. I wrote back to Victor immediately. I did not authorize any property transfer. I did not sign any documents creating a trust. Check the signature. It won't match mine. Victor's next letter came faster. I've requested copies of the trust documents. If the signature is forged, this changes everything. The next visitor request came on schedule. Month 18. Lucas again. I declined without hesitation. But this time, Torres stopped me after I handed back the form. He brought his wife this time. They both looked pretty upset when we told them you declined. She was crying in the parking lot before they even got inside. Okay. You really don't care, do you? I care about the truth. What truth? The one that's going to come out. He shook his head and walked away, muttering something about cold-hearted people. I went back to the library. Mrs. Pacheco smiled when she saw me. I set aside some new books for you, she said. Legal precedents on property fraud. I thought you might find them interesting. Thank you, Mrs. Pacheco. How did you know? I've been doing this job long enough to recognize when someone's building a case. And you, Mr. Hale, have been very focused in your reading lately. She was perceptive. I'd been careful, but apparently not careful enough. I'm innocent, I said simply. I know, she replied. I can always tell. There's a difference in the eyes. Guilty men look defeated. Innocent men look determined. Which one am I? Very determined. Over the next weeks, I devoured everything she gave me. Cases of financial fraud, cases of forged signatures, cases where family members had stolen property from incarcerated relatives. It happened more often than I'd realized. I also learned about forensic handwriting analysis, how experts could determine with high accuracy whether a signature was genuine, how pressure points differed, how stroke patterns varied, how nearly impossible it was to perfectly forge someone's signature. I wrote to Victor again with specific questions. Have you obtained the trust documents yet? Has anyone analyzed the signature? Has anyone checked if any loans were taken against my property? His response came during month 20, and it changed everything. I received the trust documents. I showed them to a forensic handwriting expert. Her preliminary analysis indicates the signature is not yours. I'm now investigating whether any financial transactions occurred after the trust was created. I read that letter 3 times, then I folded it and put it under my mattress with the others. They'd forged my signature, they'd stolen my house, and they'd done it while I sat in a cell for a crime I didn't commit. Raymond was watching me from his bunk. You look like you just found something important. I did. Good news or bad news? Justice news, he smiled. That's the best kind. 2 weeks later, another letter from Victor. A home equity line of credit was opened against your property 6 weeks after the trust was created. $80,000 was withdrawn over the following months. I have the transaction records. The signature on the loan documents also doesn't match your handwriting. I'm filing a motion with the court to investigate this fraud. $80,000. I did the math in my head. Lucas had bought that truck 4 months after I was sentenced. $28,000. Mara had purchased furniture and electronics. $11,000. Their credit card balances had been paid off. $32,000. Total, $71,000. Close enough to $80,000 when you factored in interest and fees. They hadn't just sent me to prison. They'd robbed me blind while I was locked up. Raymond broke the silence. You all right? Yes. You don't look all right. I'm exactly where I need to be. What does that mean? It means if I weren't here, I wouldn't have found this. I wouldn't have had time to investigate. I wouldn't have built the case. Prison gave me time to think, time to plan, time to gather evidence. So you're saying this was worth it? No, but I'm saying it wasn't wasted. Month 21 brought another visitor request. Declined. Month 22 brought a phone call request. Declined. Month 23 brought a handwritten letter. I didn't open it. I handed it directly back to the guard. You sure you don't want to read it? He asked. Positive. It might be important. If it was important, they'd say it in court. He shrugged and walked away. Victor visited me in person during month 23. It was the first time he'd come to the prison. We sat in a private room reserved for attorney-client meetings. A small space with a table and 2 chairs, no windows, just concrete walls and fluorescent lighting. The investigation is moving forward, he said without preamble. I've contacted a forensic handwriting expert named Dr. Skye Marin. She's reviewed the trust documents and the loan paperwork. She's prepared to testify that the signatures are forgeries. What else? I've contacted medical experts about the miscarriage, specifically about whether trauma could have caused it in the manner described. And? Dr. Patricia Lim, an OB/GYN with 30 years of experience, has reviewed Mara's medical records. She says the timeline doesn't support trauma-induced miscarriage. The bruising documented in the photographs is superficial, not consistent with the force that would be required to cause what Mara claimed. I felt something release in my chest. Validation, not just about the alibi, about the medical impossibility of their accusation. There's more, Victor continued. I've hired a forensic accountant to trace every dollar that was taken from your property. Where it went, what it was used for. We have a complete financial picture now. What does it show? That Lucas and Mara were drowning in debt. Credit cards maxed out, personal loans in default, gambling debts. They were facing potential legal action from creditors. And then suddenly, right after your conviction, money starts flowing. Debts get paid off, major purchases get made, all cash, no loans, no financing. Premeditation. Exactly. This wasn't opportunistic. This was planned. They needed money. They saw an opportunity. They took it. What about the appeal? I'm filing it in 3 weeks. I'm timing it carefully. I want all the evidence documented, all the expert witnesses lined up, all the financial records subpoenaed. When we go before the appeals court, I want it to be so overwhelming that there's no question. How long until I'm released? Your sentence is 2 years. You're at month 23 now. 1 more month and you're out. The appeal won't be heard until after your release. Good. Victor looked confused. Good? Most people would want to get out sooner. Most people aren't building what I'm building. Which is? A case so strong they'll never recover from it. Not just legally, publicly. I want everyone to know what they did. He studied me for a long moment. You've changed in here. I've had time to think clearly. This is more than that. You're not angry. You're not bitter. You're calculated. I prefer the term patient. Most people who go through what you've gone through, they come out broken, angry, vengeful, but you're coming out with a plan. Because I spent every day in here working toward this moment, every refusal, every hour in the library, every letter to you. It all had a purpose. And what happens when you're released? The truth comes out, all of it. The medical evidence, the forged documents, the stolen money, everything. You want this public. I want it undeniable. He nodded slowly. I've reached out to a journalist, Clara Nolan. She does investigative work on wrongful convictions. She's interested in your story. Tell her to wait. Wait for what? Wait until I'm released. Wait until the appeal is heard. Wait until we have the court ruling. Then she can publish. Maximum impact. You're sure about this? Going public is risky. It can backfire. They made this public when they accused me, when they testified in open court, when they played victims for the media. I'm just correcting the record. All right, I'll coordinate with Clara. Everything goes live the day of the appeal ruling. After Victor left, I went back to my cell. Raymond was reading another Western. He glanced up when I entered. Big meeting? Yes. Good news? Very good news. You going to tell me about it? No, but you'll hear about it eventually. Everyone will. He smiled and went back to his book. I lay on my bunk and stared at the ceiling. 1 more month, 30 days, then freedom, then vindication, then justice. Lucas and Mara thought they'd won. They thought the story was over. They thought I was just another inmate serving time. They had no idea what was coming. The final month moved slowly. Each day felt longer than the last. Not because I was anxious. I wasn't nervous. I was ready. Like a runner at the starting line, every muscle tensed, waiting for the signal to begin. I kept my routine, library every afternoon, meals at the assigned times, work detail in the kitchen, everything exactly as I'd done for the past 23 months. No changes. No deviations. Nothing that would draw attention. Raymond was being released 2 weeks before me. 4 years served for wire fraud. Time served with good behavior. On his last morning, he came to find me in the library. I wanted to say goodbye, he said. Good luck out there. You too, and Ethan? Yeah? Whatever you're planning, I hope it works. I hope you make them pay for what they did. I will. I believe you. You're the most patient man I've ever met. He left. I went back to my reading. Mrs. Pacheco had found 1 more book for me. Public Perception and Legal Outcomes. It was about how media coverage affected court cases, how public opinion could influence appeals, how timing mattered when releasing information. I read it cover to cover in 2 days. Victor sent 1 final letter. It arrived 5 days before my release. Everything is ready. The appeal is scheduled for December 6th, 1 day after your release. I've coordinated with the court. I've coordinated with Clara Nolan. She has her article written. All the evidence documented. Expert testimonies recorded. Financial records compiled. The press conference is scheduled for 2 p.m. the same day. This is it, Ethan. Everything you've been waiting for. I read the letter twice. Then I burned it in the small metal trash can in my cell, just like I'd done with all the others. The guards didn't care. People burned personal papers all the time. Torres stopped me in the corridor 3 days before my release. Your son tried to visit again yesterday. I know. How do you know? I just got the request form this morning. Because it's been 24 months. He's come every single month. Of course he tried again. Torres looked at the form in his hand. You want me to just mark it declined? Yes. He looked desperate, older somehow, tired. Good. He shook his head. I still don't understand you, Hale, but I respect it. Whatever you're doing, you've stuck with it. Patience isn't complicated, it's just rare. The night before my release, I didn't sleep. I lay on my bunk and watched the shadows move across the ceiling as the guard tower lights swept past. I replayed the past 2 years in my head. Every decision, every refusal, every piece of evidence Victor had gathered. It had all been building to this. Tomorrow, I walked out. The next day, the truth came out. The day after that, Lucas and Mara's world collapsed. Not through force, not through rage, just through facts. Morning came. The guard arrived at my cell at 5:30. Release day, Hale. Let's get you processed. I got up. Raymond's bunk was still empty. They hadn't assigned a new cellmate yet. I showered one last time in the communal bathroom, put on my orange uniform one final time, gathered my few possessions, the books Mrs. Pacheco had let me keep, a notebook full of observations, nothing else. The release process started at 6. They took me to processing, verified my identity, returned my personal belongings, the clothes I'd been wearing when I was arrested 2 years ago, my wallet with $43 in it, my watch, my keys. I changed out of the orange, put on my old clothes. They felt strange, looser. I'd lost weight in here. A guard handed me a bus voucher and an envelope with $73. Standard release package. You need a ride to the bus station? No, someone's picking me up. All right, you're free to go. He led me through the corridors one last time. Past C Block, where I'd lived for 2 years. Past the cafeteria, where I'd eaten 1,000 meals. Past the library, where I'd planned everything. Past the visitation room, where I'd refused to go 24 times. The front gate opened. Cold December air hit my face. Freedom. Victor was waiting in the parking lot, standing beside his black sedan. Engine running, exhaust visible in the cold morning air. He smiled when he saw me. Welcome back to the world. I didn't respond. I just got in the car. We drove in silence for 30 minutes. The prison disappeared behind us. The landscape changed. Rural roads became suburban streets, became city blocks. Finally, Victor spoke. How do you feel? Ready. The hearing is tomorrow morning at 9. Judge Mitchell presiding. Different judge than your original trial. He's reviewed all the evidence. The medical expert testimony, the forensic handwriting analysis, the financial records, everything. Will Lucas and Mara be there? No, they haven't been notified. It's not required for an appeal hearing. They'll find out when the ruling is announced. Perfect. After the ruling, we go straight to the press conference, courthouse steps. Clara will be there with the media, local news, national outlets if they pick up the story. I'll make a statement first, then you, then questions. What about criminal charges? The prosecutor's office has been briefed. If the appeal succeeds and your conviction is overturned, they'll immediately open an investigation into Lucas and Mara for fraud, perjury, forgery, and identity theft. Arrest warrants will be issued within hours. I nodded slowly. So everything happens at once. Everything happens at once. You walk out of prison on the 5th. Your conviction is overturned on the 6th. Criminal charges are filed against them. Clara's article goes live. By evening of December 6th, everyone will know the truth. Good. We drove to Victor's office. He had a folder waiting. 3 folders, actually, each one thick with documents. This is everything, he said, spreading them across the conference table. Medical evidence, property fraud, financial analysis. I opened the first folder. Dr. Patricia Lim's medical report was on top. I read her conclusion carefully. The miscarriage described in this case shows no medical evidence of trauma-induced termination. The timeline and physiological markers are inconsistent with the alleged assault. The bruising documented in photographs is superficial and does not correlate with the severity of force claimed. In my professional opinion, this miscarriage occurred due to natural causes unrelated to any external trauma. The second folder contained the property fraud evidence. The forged trust documents. The handwriting analysis showing the signature wasn't mine. The home equity line of credit opened without my authorization. The withdrawal records showing $80,000 taken over 6 months. The third folder was the financial analysis. Lucas and Mara's credit card statements, their bank records, the sudden influx of cash that paid off their debts, the truck purchase, the furniture, the electronics. Every dollar traced back to money stolen from my property. "This is overwhelming," I said. "It's airtight," Victor corrected. "There's no defense against this. The evidence is too clear, the timeline is too obvious, the pattern is too consistent. What's the media strategy?" "Clara's article goes live at 3 p.m. tomorrow, right after the press conference. She's already interviewed Janet Price, the forensic experts, people who know Lucas and Mara. She has a complete picture." "What's her angle?" "Truth, justice, patience, the man who refused to break, who maintained his innocence for 2 years, who built his case from inside a prison cell. It's a powerful story. It's the only story. Everything else was lies." Victor smiled. "That's the right attitude." I stayed in a hotel that night, a simple room with clean sheets and hot water. I took a long shower, ate a meal from a restaurant instead of a cafeteria, lay in a bed that wasn't bolted to the floor. But I didn't celebrate. I didn't drink. I didn't call anyone. I just sat by the window and watched the city lights and waited for morning. Tomorrow, everything changed. The courthouse was already crowded when Victor and I arrived at 8:30, camera crews setting up on the plaza, reporters checking microphones, early morning cold making everyone's breath visible. Clara Nolan was there, standing near the steps with her notebook and recorder. She was in her early 40s, sharp-eyed, professional. She'd built her career on investigative journalism about wrongful convictions. She'd broken major stories before, but this one, according to Victor, was different. This one had everything. "Mr. Hale," she said when she saw me, "I've been following your case for months. I'm honored to tell your story." "Thank you. I have to warn you. Once my article goes live, once people understand what happened to you, this is going to explode. National news, social media, everyone will be talking about it. Are you ready for that?" "Yes." "You seem very calm." "I've had 2 years to prepare." She smiled. "I can tell. Victor sent me your statement for the press conference. It's perfect. Factual, powerful, no unnecessary emotion. That's exactly the right approach." We went inside. The courtroom was different from where I'd been tried and sentenced. Smaller, less imposing, but the weight of what was about to happen made it feel enormous. Judge Mitchell entered at 9 exactly. He was in his 60s, gray hair, firm voice, reputation for being thorough and fair. Victor had told me that Mitchell didn't tolerate games in his courtroom. He dealt in facts and evidence, nothing more. "Be seated. We're here for an appeal in the matter of State versus Ethan Hale. Mr. Nolan, you filed this appeal. Present your case." Victor stood. "Your Honor, we have new evidence that definitively proves Mr. Hale's innocence. Medical expert testimony, a forensic handwriting analysis, financial records proving fraud, and we can demonstrate that Mr. Hale's original conviction was obtained through perjured testimony and falsified evidence. Proceed." Victor presented everything methodically. "Doctor, Lim's medical analysis showing the miscarriage wasn't trauma-induced. The handwriting expert's report proving the signatures on the trust and loan documents were forged. The financial accountant's findings showing exactly how the stolen money was used." Judge Mitchell listened carefully, asked pointed questions, reviewed documents. His expression grew darker as the evidence mounted. After 90 minutes, he held up his hand. "I've heard enough. Mr. Walsh, does the state wish to respond?" Dennis Walsh, the original prosecutor, stood. He looked uncomfortable. "No, Your Honor. After reviewing this evidence, the state agrees that Mr. Hale's conviction should be overturned. We acknowledge that justice was not served in the original trial." Judge Mitchell nodded. Then he looked directly at me. "Mr. Hale, based on the evidence presented today, this court finds that your conviction was obtained through fraudulent testimony and falsified evidence. Your conviction is hereby overturned. All charges are dismissed. You are fully and completely exonerated. The court apologizes for the miscarriage of justice you have suffered." He banged the gavel. The sound echoed through the courtroom. Final, definitive, complete. Victor shook my hand. Walsh came over and shook it too. "I'm sorry for what you went through, Mr. Hale. We'll be filing criminal charges against your accusers this afternoon." "Thank you." We walked out of the courthouse into the cold morning air. The plaza was even more crowded now. More cameras, more reporters. Word had spread that something big was happening. Victor moved to the microphone first. This morning, Judge Robert Mitchell overturned the wrongful conviction of Ethan Hale. Mr. Hale spent 2 years in prison for a crime he did not commit. He was convicted based on false testimony from his son Lucas Hale and daughter-in-law Mara Hale. But today, the truth has been revealed. He held up the medical report. Dr. Patricia Lim, a respected OB/GYN specialist with 30 years of experience, has confirmed that the miscarriage in question was not caused by trauma. The medical evidence does not support the accusation. The timeline is inconsistent. The bruising documented in photographs was superficial and unrelated to the alleged assault. Cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled notes. I could see the shock on their faces as they processed what Victor was saying. Furthermore, while Mr. Hale was incarcerated, unable to protect his assets, his son and daughter-in-law engaged in systematic financial fraud. They forged Mr. Hale's signature on multiple legal documents. They illegally transferred his house into a trust, naming themselves as beneficiaries. They opened a home equity line of credit against his property and withdrew $80,000. They used that money to pay off personal debts and purchase luxury items. Gasps from the crowd. Someone in the back shouted a question, but Victor continued. This was not a mistake. This was not a misunderstanding. This was a deliberate, premeditated scheme to imprison an innocent man and steal his property. The evidence is overwhelming and irrefutable. Criminal charges are being filed this afternoon. Lucas Hale and Mara Hale will be arrested and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. He stepped back. I moved to the microphone. The crowd quieted instantly. Every camera focused on me, every reporter ready to write. This was the moment I'd been planning for 2 years. I looked directly into the cameras. My name is Ethan Hale. 2 years ago, my son accused me of assaulting his wife and causing her miscarriage. I was arrested, I was tried, I was convicted, I was sent to prison. Pause. I was also innocent. Another pause. Let them feel the weight of that statement. For 2 years, I sat in a cell. For 2 years, my son and his wife requested to visit me. Every single month, 24 times total, and every single month I refused to see them. I could see confusion in some faces, curiosity in others. Why would a father refuse to see his son? I refused because I knew the truth would come out. I knew their lies would collapse under scrutiny. I knew that patience and discipline would outlast deception, and I was right. Today, the court has confirmed what I always knew. I am innocent, the medical evidence proves it, the forensic evidence proves it, the timeline proves it. My alibi was always solid. The jury got it wrong. But this isn't just about a wrongful conviction. While I was serving time for a crime I didn't commit, Lucas and Mara Hale were stealing my property. They forged my signature. They transferred my house into a trust. They took out loans against it. They withdrew $80,000 and spent it on themselves. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't confusion. This was a calculated plan to imprison me and rob me while I was locked away. I looked directly at the main camera again. To Lucas and Mara Hale. You took 2 years of my life. You stole my property. You destroyed my reputation, but you didn't break me. You didn't win. And now everyone knows what you really are. I stepped back. The plaza erupted. Questions shouted from every direction. Cameras flashing, reporters pushing forward. Victor fielded the questions. Confirmed that arrest warrants had been issued. Confirmed that civil suits would follow. Confirmed that I would be seeking full restitution plus damages. Clara's article went live at exactly 3 p.m. The headline was perfect. Innocent father serves 2 years while son steals his life. How patience and evidence destroyed a web of lies. Within an hour, it was trending on every social media platform. Within 2 hours, major news networks were covering it. By evening, my face was on every channel. The story people couldn't stop talking about. But it wasn't just the wrongful conviction. It was the refusals. The 24 times I'd turned away my own son. The absolute discipline. The unwavering certainty. The patience to wait 2 years for this moment. People called me inspirational. They called me the strongest man they'd ever seen. They called me a symbol of perseverance. I didn't feel like any of those things. I just felt finished. Victor called at 6 p.m. Lucas and Mara were arrested 2 hours ago, both in custody. Bail hearing tomorrow morning. Good. There's something else. The prosecutor found additional evidence during the investigation. 3 other victims. People Lucas and Mara ran similar schemes on over the past 5 years. What kind of schemes? False accusations, property fraud, identity theft. Same pattern. They'd identify someone vulnerable, build a relationship, then fabricate a crisis or accusation, steal from them while they were dealing with the fallout. How much did they steal total? Over $200,000 across all victims. The prosecutor is considering federal charges: wire fraud, conspiracy, racketeering. How much time would that add? Another 5 to 7 years on top of state charges. We're talking 15 years minimum if they're convicted on everything. I was quiet for a moment, processing this. Ethan, you still there? Yes. How do you feel? I feel like justice is finally working the way it should. Over the next 2 days, the story exploded. My face was everywhere. News coverage was relentless. Social media was flooded with reactions. People sharing the story. People commenting. People outraged. Lucas and Mara's bail was set at $100,000 each. Neither could post it. They were being held pending trial. Just like I had been. Just like they deserved. The days after my exoneration blurred together. Constant phone calls, interview requests, media attention I hadn't fully prepared for despite Victor's warnings. Everyone wanted to talk to the man who'd been wrongfully imprisoned. The father betrayed by his son. The man who'd refused 24 prison visits. I declined most interviews, but I agreed to one. A respected journalist who'd built her career on wrongful conviction cases. She came to Victor's office 3 days after my release. Professional, respectful. She asked good questions. How did you stay so calm? How did you maintain that discipline for 2 years? Because I knew I was right. And when you know you're right, you don't need validation from people who are wrong. But they were your family. They stopped being my family when they chose to lie. Do you hate them? No. Hate requires caring. I just don't think about them anymore. What would you say to them if they were here right now? I looked directly at the camera. Nothing. I've already said everything that matters. In court, in public, where everyone can see the truth. They have to live with what they did. That's punishment enough. The interview aired on Sunday night. 20 million viewers. By Monday morning, my story was everywhere again. Clara published a follow-up article. She'd done more digging, found the other victims Lucas and Mara had targeted, interviewed them, documented the pattern that had gone on for years. One victim was an elderly man named Frank Patterson, 78 years old, retired teacher. Lucas had convinced him he needed money for Mara's cancer treatment. Frank had given them $35,000. There had never been any cancer. Another was a business owner named Jade Wu. She'd partnered with Lucas on a construction project. When money went missing, Lucas accused her of embezzlement. She'd nearly been charged before an audit proved Lucas had taken the money himself. The third was a young woman named Beck Grant. She'd befriended Mara at a gym. Over 2 years, Mara had borrowed $15,000 for various emergencies. None of the emergencies were real. The money was never repaid. The pattern was clear. Lucas and Mara were career criminals who used false accusations and emotional manipulation to steal from people who trusted them. And I was the one who'd finally stopped them. The district attorney called a press conference for the following week. She announced that federal charges were being filed: wire fraud, mail fraud, conspiracy, racketeering under the RICO statute. These defendants operated a criminal enterprise for at least 5 years, she said. They targeted vulnerable individuals, they fabricated crises, they stole property, they destroyed lives, and they showed no remorse. She detailed each victim, each scheme, each lie. The evidence was overwhelming. Because these are federal charges, they carry mandatory minimum sentences. If convicted, Lucas and Mara Hale will each face an additional 7 to 10 years in federal prison, to be served after their state sentences. We're looking at 15 to 20 years total incarceration. The media coverage intensified. Lucas and Mara's faces were everywhere, not as victims this time, as criminals, their mugshots, their arrest records, their entire history of fraud exposed. Victor kept me updated on the legal proceedings. The grand jury indicted them on all federal charges. Trial is set for 8 months from now. Their public defender is already talking about plea deals. What kind of deals? Guilty pleas in exchange for reduced sentences, maybe 12 to 15 years instead of 20. Are the prosecutors considering it? Possibly. It would save the cost of a trial. But given the number of victims and the systematic nature of the fraud, they might push for maximum sentences. What do you think they should do? Legally? Either way works. Personally, I think they should go to trial. Let a jury hear everything. Let the victims testify. Let the world see exactly what Lucas and Mara did. I spent the next several weeks rebuilding my life. I contacted old clients, restarted my construction business. Some people were hesitant at first, but most had read the news. Most had seen the evidence. Most apologized and hired me immediately. My business grew faster than before. The publicity helped. People wanted to hire the man who'd been wrongfully imprisoned, who'd proven his innocence, who'd maintained his integrity even when it cost him everything. I hired 3 employees, young guys who needed work and training. I taught them properly, showed them how to do the job right. Within 2 months, we had more work than we could handle. My house was officially returned to me. The fraudulent trust was dissolved. The home equity line was declared invalid. I'd get the $80,000 back eventually through restitution and civil judgments. But more importantly, my property was mine again. I spent a weekend cleaning it, replacing everything Lucas and Mara had changed, new furniture, new curtains, new everything, erasing every trace of them. The trial date approached. Spring turned to summer. Victor prepared thoroughly. The prosecution's case was strong, the evidence overwhelming, the witnesses credible. Lucas and Mara's defense team tried to argue they genuinely believed I was guilty, that they'd thought they were protecting Mara, that the financial transactions were poor judgment, not fraud. Nobody bought it. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Testimony from all the victims, financial experts, forensic analysts, everything documented, everything proven. The jury deliberated for 1 day. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing was set for 6 weeks later. I attended the sentencing hearing. Not because I needed to see Lucas and Mara suffer, but because the other victims deserved to see justice delivered, and because I wanted to close this chapter completely. The courtroom was packed. Media, spectators, all 3 other victims were there: Frank Patterson, Jade Wu, Beck Grant. They'd all asked to give victim impact statements. Judge Powell presided, the same judge who'd sentenced me 2 years ago, the same judge who'd seen the evidence of my innocence. She looked stern as Lucas and Mara were brought in. They'd changed in jail, thinner, older. The arrogance was gone. They looked small, defeated. They didn't look at any of us. The prosecutor gave her recommendation first. Your Honor, the defendants engaged in a systematic pattern of fraud spanning at least 5 years. They targeted 7 victims that we know of. They stole over $200,000. They showed no remorse throughout their trial. They continued to claim they were victims, even as the evidence proved otherwise. We recommend the maximum sentence allowed by law. The defense attorney tried to argue for leniency. He talked about their difficult childhoods, their financial struggles, their genuine grief over the miscarriage. He painted them as people who'd made terrible decisions under pressure, but who could be rehabilitated. Judge Powell listened without expression. Then she invited the victims to speak. Frank Patterson went first. His voice shook, but his words were clear. I trusted them. I thought I was saving a young woman's life. Instead, they stole my retirement savings. I had to go back to work at 78 because of them. Jade Wu spoke next. They almost destroyed my business, my reputation, my family. I spent $50,000 on lawyers to clear my name, money I'll never get back. Beck Grant was last. I thought she was my friend. I helped her through crisis after crisis. Every emergency was fake, every dollar stolen. She betrayed my trust completely. Then Judge Powell looked at me. Mr. Hale, would you like to make a statement? I stood and walked to the front of the courtroom. Lucas and Mara were 15 feet away. I didn't look at them. I looked at the judge. Your Honor, 2 years ago I stood in this courtroom and heard you sentence me to prison for a crime I didn't commit. I don't blame you. The evidence seemed compelling. The jury had spoken. You did your job correctly. I paused. But I knew I was innocent. I knew the truth would eventually come out. So I waited. I built my case. I gathered evidence. I refused to break, and I was vindicated. Another pause. These 2 people aren't just criminals. They're predators. They identify vulnerable victims. They build trust. They create crises. Then they strike. They've done this to multiple people over many years. They would have kept doing it if I hadn't exposed them. I don't hate them. Hatred would require me to care about them. I don't. I just want them held accountable for what they've done. I want them to serve real time. I want other victims to see that false accusations have serious consequences. I sat down. Judge Powell took a long moment before speaking. When she did, her voice was firm. Lucas Hale and Mara Hale, you have been found guilty of fraud, perjury, forgery, identity theft, wire fraud, conspiracy, and racketeering. The evidence against you is overwhelming. You targeted innocent people. You destroyed lives. You stole hundreds of thousands of dollars. You showed no remorse during your trial. She paused. I sentenced Mr. Hale to 2 years in prison based on your false testimony. He served every day of that sentence for something he didn't do. You will now serve time for what you actually did. Another pause. Lucas Hale, you are sentenced to 10 years in federal prison on the federal charges, to be served consecutively with 9 years in state prison on the state charges. Total sentence, 19 years. No possibility of parole for the first 12 years. Mara started crying silently. Mara Hale, you are sentenced to 9 years in federal prison on the federal charges, to be served consecutively with 8 years in state prison on the state charges. Total sentence, 17 years. No possibility of parole for the first 11 years. She banged the gavel. Mara sobbed openly. Lucas sat frozen, staring at the table. Bailiffs moved to take them into custody. As they stood, Lucas looked at me for the first time. His eyes were empty, hollow. He opened his mouth like he wanted to say something. I looked away. 3 months later, Victor called on a Tuesday morning. The prosecutor's office discovered something else. More victims, at least 4 more. The investigation found patterns going back 7 years, 11 victims total now, over $350,000 stolen. What does that mean? Additional federal charges. The prosecutor wants to announce it publicly. Press conference next week. They want you there. I'll be there. The following Tuesday, I arrived at the courthouse plaza. The setup was familiar. Camera crews, reporters, District Attorney Janet Cross at the podium. At exactly 2 p.m., she began. Today we announce the discovery of additional victims in the criminal enterprise operated by Lucas Hale and Mara Hale. Our investigation has uncovered at least 4 more individuals who were defrauded over a 7-year period. This brings the total to 11 known victims and over $350,000 stolen. She detailed the new cases, each one following the same pattern: false accusations, emotional manipulation, financial theft. We are filing additional federal charges. If convicted, the defendants will face an additional 3 to 5 years in federal prison on top of their current sentences. She gestured to me. Mr. Hale, would you like to say anything? I stepped to the microphone. Every camera focused on me. This was the final moment, the last statement. 3 years ago, my son and his wife destroyed my life. They sent me to prison. They stole my property. They thought they'd gotten away with it. Pause. Today, they're serving sentences that will keep them in prison for the next 2 decades, not because of revenge, because of truth, because of consequences. I spent 2 years in a cell refusing to see them, building my case, waiting for justice, and justice came. They targeted 11 people. They stole hundreds of thousands of dollars. They lied to everyone, and now everyone knows what they really are. I looked directly at the cameras. To anyone facing false accusations, build your case, gather evidence, trust the truth, wait, because eventually the truth wins. The plaza erupted with questions, the cameras flashing, reporters shouting. But I was already walking down the courthouse steps, already leaving. The story was over. Every word had been said, every fact revealed, every piece of justice delivered. Victor caught up with me at his car. That was perfect. It's finished. Yes, it is. We drove away. The courthouse disappeared behind us. 3 years of fighting, 3 years of waiting, 3 years of building the case, and now it was done. Lucas and Mara would spend the next 20 years in prison. I had my life back, my business, my home, my freedom, my truth. I'd won.